You do not realize it, but the very eyes with which you see subvert you. You have a natural inclination to following through on your emotions and your instinctive impressions. When you are hungry, you seek out food. Thirst, water. Tiredness, you seek out sleep. You seek out comforts because the feeling, the sensation that you get as a reward for doing so is a natural accommodation. But this does not always work in your favor. There is a sort of plateau with this as a person, as a human being, as a creature with the capacity to supersede its instincts, with the ability to discern the difference between those instinctive satisfactions and a higher rationalization, an attunement to something larger than just that. When people are enduring hard times, it could be difficult to convince them of a life that's different, that's better, to believe that that's possible. When I observe the world around me, the world is as it is. The sky is blue, the grass is green, the dirt in my hands, I can feel its moisture, I can smell the petrichor. I can hold it in my hands. This is how we often operate. Now, take someone at any random point in history and try to convince them that there are things beyond what they can see that are also there. Things like ultraviolet and infrared color. Why would someone assume that this exists when they cannot see it, when they cannot hold it in their hands, when they are very often abiding by a very demanding life, most especially in history and in most parts of the world? Life is brutal, it is demanding, and it is immediate. There is little time to spare on such trivial thoughts as that, as something other than what my eyes can physically see being present. That pattern, that forwardness, also exists in our emotions, in our psychology. We are a tribal creature. We are predisposed to an anxiety, to a self-comparison, because that is how we operate. Ego is tethered to our biological base because we exist in a selection. Just the same as other animals perform mating rituals, mating dances, we too possess the very same things. Only we have language that permeates it, that creates a chronology of it, that is different than it is with other animals, that is harder to discern for other animals. It is easier for us to start to attach a sense of identity to these passive considerations, these passive thoughts. I have words occurring in my conscious thoughts that allow a connection to identity, emotions to identity, where, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau describes the first tribal dance around the fire, I can become offended that this woman has actually found herself more flattered by this man's prowess, or perhaps he may begin to internally feel a sort of bitterness and resentment that I have been chosen as superior. But really, these things are just base. They are mere consequences of existing in the manner that we do. If you follow this tether unthinking, without an introspect, it will mislead you. Because if you begin to fall into the mental traps of said anxieties, of said things that you are predisposed to, you will have a difficult time being able to feel free and invigorated, as you will be held, clutched, clamped by analysis, by comparison, by self-judgment. When we look back at the days of old, you can feel the anxiety. You could assume and extrapolate just the lack of peace and security that many people throughout most of human history went through. I mean, this is a time where, on the matter of some principles, you could immediately have your safety, your security revoked and be killed, be brutally tortured, have your communities burned. The intensity that the rules of life in such circumstances demand affect the psyche of the person. And so we have to be extremely grateful for the luxuries we now enjoy so commonly, so easily. These wealths, these riches, these luxuries, these are not things of consequence and mere circumstance that happened to be in our possession. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people, incomprehensible amounts of intertwined lives, have delivered us to where we are. It has been no easy feat. And as we no longer exist in such brutal confines, if these luxuries we do enjoy, we have a duty and a responsibility to have gratefulness and to liberate ourselves from this pity and this torment and this suffering. For the mind will always be predisposed to leaning into that, to wanting to wear it around itself and define itself based on such things. But that is unnecessary. The eyes with which you see subvert you. The thoughts that occur in your mind are not always indicative of who you truly are. Just the same as the instinct to hunger or to a joyous act or a repulsion from that which is uncomfortable to you. Though that is in your own voice, though it is your tonality, though you recognize it and feel it, it is not at all times you. So do not follow it blindly. Be deliberate. Discern. You're participating in a society that covets pearls, celebrities, richness, lavishness, and commodifies it in a way that has never been seen before. And so this scale at which society is, and has always been, society has always coveted lavishness. Where does that come from? It comes from the many thousands and thousands and thousands forced to capitulate to what could be compared to indentured servitude by those who are not beholden to such things. And what's the difference between them? Economic independence, economic stability, economic freedom to excise themselves. It's a wealth difference. It's a disparity in that sense. And so people have always coveted such things to separate themselves from the constrainment and from the bonds and the bindings of their present state. People always have wanted to fashion themselves in such ways, to distinguish themselves that way, that the glisten of gold does satisfy, much like it does to quench one's thirst. It is natural and necessary as a consequence of the way that we operate. And so you, as an unconscious perceiver, the people before us, we have all sort of been corralled into sating an ego-based mindset, into participating and envying after vanity, after stuff. And in a time like today, where there are millions of voices, millions of thoughts, millions of goals, millions of things to compare yourself to, that is when the steadiness of your mind is most prudent most necessary. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations commends this idea that he was tutored privately. This idea that your education should be invested into in a quiet manner, and that you in your life not be prone to these endless life coaches and life advisors and all these people trying to tell you how to think and how to feel. Because the truth lies within you, beneath all of that which you are unable to get through. It is within. You must dig deep and go within and go beyond these feelings. That's where the discernment is necessary. Because if you just follow the tether of your emotions, if you think to yourself, this person knows better than me, I need to follow their lead, I am subordinated to them, I'm inferior to them, I wish I could just be like everyone else, I wish I could just be like them. If I could just have it given to me on a silver platter, then I would be happy. Those emotions are not real. That is not truth. That is not reality. And so that is where you must stand. That is where you must feel the tide of these emotions. Feel the direction your mind, your flesh wants to go. And realize that that is a subversion of yourself. Rise above it. Invoke what is true about you, what is truly indicative of you, not the pressures of what is outside, but what is from within you. That is the difference between someone that is subverted by the happenstance of their biological makeup, by their schematic, by their base. That's the difference between that and someone who is executing on their capacity to supersede their instincts. That is why Socrates battened down the hatches so much with regards to foregoing a sense of hubris. That is why piety in his perspective, that is why objective morality in his perspective, in the perspective of the Stoics, in the perspective of the Christian writers, of many philosophers, of many great writers, is that you must have detachment. You must be humble. The presumption that the creature calculating within, the base within, is not all there is. So if you follow only the tether of what you feel, as a lion has the instinct to feed itself, you will be subverted. For a creature with the capacity to supersede their instincts, to reason, it is not enough that you simply follow and execute on these base impressions. So dig in and dig deep.